Having a sample API is a useful tool when learning web development because it gives you something to test your front end against. In this course, we are building a sample API that can be used both locally and via the web. Along the way, we are learning how to build and deploy a minimal API in C#. When we're done, we'll have built an API with sample data that's documented, has health checks, simulates slowdowns and errors, and is deployed both as a Docker container as well as a web application on a virtual private server. The end result will be a tool you can use in testing for your own apps. In this lesson, we're going to deploy our application to the Docker Hub so that anyone can download an image and use it right away. So let's get started. Now, in our app, we have here, what we're going to do is deploy just the API project. So just this project here, we actually want to keep this open, the CS project file, because we're going to make some modifications here. But before we do, I want to show you that I do have Docker installed locally. We're first going to do this locally so you can see directly on our machine what this might look like. And then we're going to get rid of it locally and we're going to deploy it directly to Docker Hub. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But first, I have Docker Desktop installed. Now, you don't have to have Docker Desktop installed. If you want to go directly to Docker Hub, you can bypass having anything locally, but you would still need to authenticate through Docker Hub. But for now, I also want to show off you can just do it locally without any kind of Docker Hub account or anything. So here I have my Docker Desktop. I have one container. That's something totally different. I use this for actually my subtitles in some of my paid courses. And there's actually the image for that as well. I also have a couple of images from Microsoft that we'll use actually this one right here, the ASP.NET one, because it's pretty small. It's 328 megabytes. So that's all I have locally though, is I have that subaligner, which is not part of this or anything to do with this. And I have two .NET containers, and that's it for local images. Now I have just that one container, and that's not running, and it's nothing to do with this course, okay? But just bear with me, because we're going to see we have more images show up in a minute, and then another container. So what we're going to do is we're not going to change anything yet, but we're going to come over here to the command line. In the command line, we're going to type a command to publish this. We're going to say .NET publish. We're going to say -p. And notice it's already kind of telling me what to do because I've done this before. Publish profile equals default container. Now, what this will do is it will publish our API. Notice I'm in the API folder here. It's going to publish this CS proj file to a default container. Now, what that means is going to choose the .NET container it thinks is the best. It has all the bells and whistles it needs. It's not the smallest one. It's not the fastest one necessarily, but it has all the tools we're going to need. Now, you can change which container by messing around in either the command line or in your CS proj file. So you can do either one, but for now, we're going to leave the default for our container. But notice there's no Docker file. Okay, if you're familiar with Docker, you may say, where is that Docker file? Because that's what you use to determine what the build process should do. But as of, I believe, .NET 8, and now we're using .NET 9, but as of .NET 8, they included the way to publish a container without having a Docker file. So you just do .NET publish and say publish to a default container. So let's run this. It's going to build our project, and it's going to create a container for us. So once this is done, we'll see, and I'm going to bring it over again, Docker Desktop now has another container. It says the sample API, tag is latest, and it was created 3 seconds ago. The total size is 333.77 megabytes. If you notice, the size of this container is 328 megabytes. So essentially, we've added less than 5 megabytes to the base image. So that's just our API. Now, we can test to make sure this is correct by hitting this run button. What that'll do is create a container for us. Notice there's no container yet. It'll create a container for us, and it's going to give us some optional settings. So let's open these up. You can give it a different name if you want to. You want to name the container. That provides a good way to reference, hey, which image is this that's running on this container, if you want to do that. Now, ports, this is important. What it's going to do is it's going to expose, by default, port 8080, which is the HTTP port. So what I'm going to do is map that to a random port on my host machine. So it's going to choose a random port and map that to port 8080 inside of the container. Now, we're not going to do volumes or variables or anything else. We're just going to hit run. So I put a 0 in the host port, which means a random port. I could have specified if I want to. You can do that if you want. But let's hit run. When we do, it now says, okay, we've got a running container. Notice it says 8080 internally, but over here it's port 32772. Again, your port will be different. But if I click on this, it's going to open up the website. So I come over here, or the API. So it says hello world. And if I say /courses, and I do pretty print here, there's all of our courses. If I do /health, I get that's unhealthy. If we refresh this a few times, it still unhealthy because of the fact that we have more than one health check and some of them are unhealthy. So that's it. That's our running application. So let's now stop this. Notice that we've got warnings and failures for our health checks. This is a test of unhealthy service. This is a degraded service, and so on. So we can see the logs right in this console in our containers. Notice we now have 2 containers. One of them is running, and it's called Elegant Hoover. Okay, random name. So that's our container from a local image. We're going to delete that container first, and then we come over to our images, and we're going to delete this image. So that's how I do it locally. That's all you have to do is that one command, .NET publish -p : publish profile equals default container. That's it. All right, let's clear the screen here. So we're not done though. I want to publish to Docker Hub. And actually, once I do, you will have access to this. You can download my image and run my image and have the full API locally. And you can stop the course right now if you wanted to, because that might be all you need is that local. Now we're going to, in a future video, publish this to a virtual private server, a VPS, where we're going to have a domain name. And we'll talk through that process. And we're going to host it at, I believe, thesampleapi.com. And we're going to have the actual API be available at that URL if you wanted to have it on the web. But if you want to have it run locally, which is a great way to do testing because it's all local, there's no internet involved, you can do that through my Docker image from my account. But how are you going to get there? Well, let's start with going to Docker Hub. Now, if you don't already sign up for a Docker Hub account or Docker account, this will give you access to Docker Hub if you want to follow along. You don't have to at this point, but you can see what I'm doing so that if you later want to follow along, you can. So I create a repository. Now, I have one private repository. I don't pay for Docker Hub, so I only get one private repository. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use a public repository. And notice I'm using it on my personal account, so it's just Tim Corey. Not I am Tim Corey, just Tim Corey. Now, the repository name, I'm going to call this the sample API. And this is going to be the repository for the sample API project where you can test your apps against a sample API quickly and easily. Something like that. All right. And then we're going, description length no longer 100 characters. Okay. Test your apps against sample API. How about that? Sure, that works. So this will create now a repository called the sample API. So it's going to be Tim Corey / the sample API. Let's hit create. Okay, so now I have this repository created on Docker Hub. It's public. Again, Tim Corey / the sample API. And now I can start pushing to this. Notice there's no tags yet. There's no tags. There's no images yet. So let's change it. Let's actually push to this account. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some modifications. Let's get rid of that. We're going to come back to our CS proj file. Now, I like doing it here because of the fact that I can specify in my CS proj file, here's how this works. Now, there's ways to do this with things like GitHub Actions, and that's a possibility, but it gets a bit more complicated because of the fact that every time you build, you don't necessarily want to create a new image. So that's a gated process, or it's going to be something where maybe you build it in, you do it internally, but not until you go to the production version do you actually publish. And then also you have to worry about how do we do things like version numbers and trying to automate that. This is the simple version, okay? I like doing simple versions to start and then making things better over time. That's my preferred way of operating. Let's get it in and running, because don't forget that time to market is one of the factors we have to think through. We can't wait to make this perfect solution 6 months down the road. We're going to do something now that will work and will work well. And then later, as we go, we can make it better and better. So what we're going to do is manually push to Docker Hub when we're ready. We're going to contain the changes or the data about our containers in our CS proj file. So what we're going to do is say container registry. Make sure you spell it right. And we're going to say docker.io. So this is which registry to publish to when we publish our Docker container. Next up, we're going to say container repository. Again, make sure you spell it right. And we're going to say this is Tim Corey / and then the sample API. Again, we just created that. So this is the repository name. This is where we're going to publish it to. And I'm going to add one more thing here. I'm going to say container image tags, plural. Now, if you only have one tag, say container image tag. But if you have more than one tag to add at one time, say container image tags, plural. So I'm going to say version 1.0.0 semicolon to separate the tags and say latest. And the reason why is because I want to have the latest tag on the latest version. And it's always going to be the latest version whenever I push a new version. So when we push a new version, I would change the version number here, again, manually for now. But when I do that and I publish, it's going to publish essentially 2 copies of my image, one with the version 1.0.0 at this point tag and one with the latest tag. When I push a new version, let's say 1.0.1, it's going to publish this version and the one that says latest, which there already is one that has latest, so it gets rid of that one and puts it on the new image. That way the latest is always on the latest version. So we'll see that in action in just a minute. But there's 3 things I add to my CS proj file for my API project. Now we're not deploying the UI project. We're just deploying the API itself. So again, that's how you set up to say, publish to Docker, here's the repository, and here's the tags I want to add. You can add as many tags as you want. They might say, well, Tim, every time I hit run, is it going to do something? No, it doesn't do anything until you actually run the publish command. So let's come back over here, and we're going to also, by the way, over in Docker Hub, it has no tags, no containers, okay? Or no images, I'm sorry. So now I come back and run that same command, .NET publish -p publish profile equals default container. I hit enter, so it's the same command, but now you've modified the CS proj file. It's going to spot that, and it's going to use that when it goes to publish. So now we can come over to our Docker Hub, we go to tags, and nothing is here. And that's my bad. So let's come back over to Docker, and we now have a new image locally. You might say, well, Tim, that's what we did last time. Yeah, let's get rid of that. So why didn't it come over here? Well, there's a really simple reason. Tim never hit save. Notice a little asterisk here? That's important. Let's hit save. Okay, now I have saved those images. Also, the green bar here tells you it's saved versus the, I think it was yellow bar before. So let's come back over here. Let's clear the screen and let's run that same command again. Hey, it's good practice to see we could do it again if we wanted to. Also notice that we didn't change anything there, so it wouldn't have had the right tags. So now this build process will take a little longer because it's going to publish up to the Docker Hub. If we come back over to Docker Hub and go to tags, now notice we have latest and version 1. Again, less than a day ago. And it's the operating system is Linux and the architecture is 64-bit. So the compressed size is 89 megabytes, but the full size is 300 and some megabytes. So we have 2 images. Now you might say, well, Tim, isn't that wasteful because we have 2 images that are the same? Well, no. First of all, the repository size is only 89.6 megabytes. It's the compressed size. But also, just because you see 2 here doesn't mean we have this duplicated as far as the actual data. Because it says, hey, these 2 are the same, so therefore I can just say I have 2, but I only actually store 1. So it has both tags, and it lists them separately, but note that you're only saving 1 image. Okay, so now we have our Tim Corey / the sample API uploaded with a latest tag. How do you get access to that? Well, pretty simple. So again, let's just show that there's nothing here in our Docker desktop, no images yet. Let's hit refresh, nothing there. Okay, now we're going to say Docker pull Tim Corey / not test, the sample API, and we're going to say latest. Okay, so I'm going to pull the Tim Corey / the sample API. Now, I didn't say Docker hub.io or any of those kind of, hub.docker.com or something like that, because by default it pulls from Docker. So Docker is going to pull from the Docker hub by default. So I'm going to say Docker pull Tim Corey / the sample API : which one? Well, the latest one. So with that, when I hit enter, now you have to have Docker installed for this, but it pulled it. And you notice it was really quick. It was very, very quick. And the reason why is because I already had, notice there it is, latest. I already had this container here, or this image here. I always get this confused. Image. I had this image here of .NET/ASP.NET, which is built upon. So it really only pulled the 5 megabyte difference. That's why it's so fast. I do have fast internet, but not quite that fast. So now I have Tim Corey / the sample API. You could run that exact same command on your machine and you get the exact same image. Now, it'll change slightly when I make a change to it, or if I do, but when I put the new version out here. But let's run this image first. So I hit run. Again, we'll do the same thing. We'll say a random port. That's it. And then we're going to click on this. It's going to open up our browser and it says hello world. And we say courses. There's our courses. So we do have an image we pulled down from the web now working. So let's go ahead and delete that container. Come back over to the image. I'll leave the image here. So let's leave the image here. And notice it's created 4 minutes ago. Now what we're going to do is we're going to refresh this, make sure it's up to date. It is. Now we're going to go here. We're going to change this to version 1.0.1 and the latest. Again, let's hit save for that. Now I am going to do the .NET publish command. Let's clear the screen first. So .NET publish, again, same command, but I've changed the tags. So let's hit publish. It's going to publish our image and upload it to the Docker Hub. So once this is done, we will refresh the Docker Hub. So go over to tags. Now there's latest 1.0.1 and 1.0.0. All right. The size is the same. We haven't really changed anything, but I did push a new version technically. So now we have 3 tags, 1.0.0, 1.0.1, and latest. So if we come back over here and look at our containers, and again, hit refresh. 4 minutes ago was the latest version, but now let's do the Docker pull command, again, the latest version. And it says, hey, there's a new one, and download it. And we come over here and hit refresh. It's 43 seconds ago. It still says the latest, but it's a new version because it's actually version 1.0.1. So that's pretty much it. That's how we would publish both locally to a container as well as publishing to a Docker Hub. We could publish other places as well. For example, the Azure Container Registry or other places. But this is also how you would access my image. So again, if we clear the screen, if you go to Docker, if you have Docker installed locally, run this command, Docker space pull space Tim Corey / the sample API : latest. You get the latest version of the sample API on your machine that you can now use in your testing of your apps. So you have an API to test for whatever you're building because now you have something locally running that you can play around with. And again, when you're done with it, you just delete it. So you just go, you know what? Gone. Delete forever. You know what? Gone. Delete forever. Okay? Just make sure that you don't have a container running first that uses that image because you can't then delete the image. So delete the containers first if you have a running container and then delete the image, but they're gone, which means they're not on your machine, which means they're not taking up space. They're not taking up resources, not running the memory or anything else. So you can run them when you need them and then get rid of them when you don't. That's what Docker images are so great for. So that's it. That's how to run this API, the sample API project, locally on your machine. Just do Docker pull Tim Corey / the sample API : latest. Now, make sure you spell Tim Corey correctly. Some people forget the E in Corey, or they think Corey's my first name. It's not. It's my last name. So Tim Corey / the sample API : latest. Okay, that's it for publishing to Docker, both locally and Docker Hub. Now, next up, what we're going to do is start working towards putting this same API onto a virtual private server. We're going to see how to do that, how to set up a virtual private server, deploy this API to that VPS, and give it a domain name and wire all that up so that you can go to a URL and get this same API if you don't want to work with Docker. Okay, that comes up next. Until then, thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.